Hello, my name is Tim Paris, and today we're going to take a look at SOLIDWORKS PDM. Where I like to begin my journey with this usually is talking about what is PDM. So many people are confused about what it really is meant to do. So as you can see on this little Wikipedia slide I have here, what it's really meant to do is to help keep your data under control. One popular misconception is I don't need PDM or I don't use PDM. That's really quite of a misnomer, because if you're saving your documents in Windows Explorer, you're using PDM, right? Everybody names their files something intelligent. They try to put them in some folder structures. And occasionally they get creative with alternative methods for trying to manage this data, often with limited or no success at all, right? So just, again, by saving your files directly to the machine, unless you're just not naming your parts or you're putting them just on the desktop by themselves, they are in some way managed by PDM. Or a PDM method, not the PDM software, right? So some people will zip files. They'll get creative with naming their files with perhaps an _A or something at the end to denote revision. They'll also create folders and nest folders upon folders upon folders, trying to organize their life in some sort of method. But no matter how you slice it, you're constantly having write access to these files, overwriting, and doing things that you very often wish you hadn't done. So, how does that work for you? Is it successful? Are you doing well with that? Or is there some sort of thing you might need? Talking with 3D CAD software, it can get very convoluted very quickly because of the spiderweb effect you get with having parts, assemblies, drawings all referencing each other, right? One of SOLIDWORKS' greatest power is you make a change to a part anywhere and it updates it everywhere, right? And that's a great value, but inversely, that's also one of its greatest weaknesses, which is why PDM comes to play, is if you were to maybe rename that part, next time you open an assembly or drawing, it's looking for it, right? So how do you keep that and you're able to work with that intelligently? Well, that's where, PDM comes into play. So again, not everybody is very successful doing it with the Windows Explorer method. Let's just face it, Windows by itself is a lousy PDM system. Whether you get creative with the _rev or you do some sort of intelligent numbering system, where you have to look at each character and then remember what each one might stand for. You have the ability, or the lack of the ability, to properly annotate what your documents truly are. And then searchability becomes very difficult. Even zip files, right? Those are very popular, but then when you're zipping, you're creating numerous amounts of duplicates, right? So you have all the same documents with only some of them changed in each one of these zip files. So we find that this process might work when you're just by yourself, and you have a limited amount of assemblies or drawings, and you just have, an abundance of drive space. But once you start collaborating, working with other people, sending things to and from customers and vendors, this process becomes very tedious, to say the least. With PDM, you have a higher capability of managing your intellectual property, bringing your employees up to speed on how to use the system. Its core function is Windows Explorer. So you should already know how to use Windows Explorer, right? How do you navigate a folder? How do you get around? It's relatively familiar. You're usually about 50 to 60% trained on day one because it's Windows Explorer. You should already know how to do quite a bit of that. It also gives you a nice bit of security with the historical functions that you'll see shortly in the product demonstration of the way PDM operates. A lot of companies are getting more in depth with ISO standards. They are embedded with the FDA or some sort of regulatory functionality where they need a verbose history, the ability for logging and tracking, and just any other kind of method where they can do rapid searching and need the ability to find that data very quickly. PDM's core is Microsoft SQL, which its entire existence is for capturing metadata and making it very easy to search and sort by. So that information is also relatively available inside of PDM as well. So let's take a quick moment just to look at the software to kind of see how this functionality works. So very often you're given some bit of data. It could have been an email from a customer, something from a manager or a coworker, some bit of data, right? As not to spend hours going through every little button click that the software can do, I'm going to take you down a quick little journey of what one person might receive as far as a bit of data to process throughout their normal daily life, right? So I've been given some sort of idea, the infamous napkin sketch, right? We've always heard of that, and it works out well to actually explain what we're getting at, right? It could just be a concept. But then as an engineer, we're required to take this concept and turn it into something that we can create and then obviously distribute. And we want to be able to do this collaboratively, right? 20 years ago, we would have 20 weeks and we could do these kind of things in a vacuum, and I do my bit and then I pass it on to somebody else and they do their bit and they can come back and forth, and we had lots of time. That interval has reduced significantly, right? So we can no longer work in our own little bubbles anymore. We have to work together, work in parallel. This process is made even simpler with the advantages of PDM. So the journey I want to take is we're going to work with the Homoltro Jaws of Life spreader mechanism. You probably have seen that same tool set in many of the different demonstrations within SolidWorks. We're going to take that and we're going to envision that we received a request from a customer, perhaps somebody out in a rural area. And the Jaws of Life that we sell today, or excuse me, the Homoltro mechanism that we sell today, comes in a length of the jaws to penetrate your typical normal commercial vehicle. We work with the Homoltro data set, that mechanism that one would use to get into a vehicle, right? Rescue, similar to like the Jaws of Life. The request came in from some sort of rural area in a state where they have a lot of, let's say, forestry vehicles or things like that, which much thicker doors, where they can't use the kind that the firemen might use to open up normal commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles, that sort of thing. So the request came in for a 2-inch extension of our existing assembly. Very simple change, and this is kind of the path I want to go down, right? I want to show you how one thing like that might be processed through PDM. So to go down this path, I want to first walk through what does the vault look like. So we're going to go through a bit of exploration as to what the actual vault looks like. And then we're going to go into a project request. So that information came in, I have to make some sort of structure, I have files to create, copies to make, so on and so forth. And then what does that design process look like? From there, review and approval, right? This is a big step, something that PDM can help to automate with emails and all kinds of different things, something that a lot of people have done in a paper mechanism. So tracking paper is something that you would then have a team of people running around scouring people's desks looking for the missing ECO, right? We've all been down that path. I've been down that path myself several times. And then lastly, searching. Now, I like to focus a bit on this one because statistically, and again, I've personally witnessed this with my 15 years experience in this industry, is most people will spend upwards of 20% of their daily lives looking for things, right? What does 20% equate to, let's say, in a week? It's a whole day that you're looking for things, right? And how long do you look for something before you go on to the next step of, well, recreating it, right? So you can't find something that you have to have, you have to draw it again. If we could just chisel away at that 20% in any particular manner, making more verbose searching, giving you the ability to search, but not just intelligent part numbers or something that you happen to name the file, but all kinds of other bits of data that could be very, very easily, readily available for you, right? So again, we're going to start by exploring the vault. And what we want to do is understand how quickly can we get somebody ramped up, right? It runs in Windows Explorer. It makes it very, very simple, very easy to teach. We provide and create users. We put users into groups. So just by logging into the computer, they then log into PDM and their permissions are already set. They get notifications. The whole thing is meant to be very seamless at the user side. So let's take a quick look at it. So right here I have my Windows Explorer up, right? I just clicked on my computer and you can see I have my drives, my C, my D. Your computer is going to look a little differently, but ultimately when you go to your home page, if you will, on your Windows Explorer, you're going to see this. Right here on a C drive is where we have the attach point to our vault. And the advantage of having it right there is that we can work locally. So if you're working across the network now, you understand how painful that can be with packet corruption and other things with files. So as I have the files cached locally, it gives me write permissions if I told the database to have write permissions, but somebody else could have it on their machine open in read-only mode, right? So just by double-clicking on the what we call the blueberry, I'm asked to log into the vault. Now I'm going to log in as Dave. Dave is one of my engineers, and I'm going to log in and again, take on Dave's responsibilities. But when Dave logs in, his permissions are inherited, his abilities are inherited, what he can and cannot see are automatically prevailed to him. So now we see we have PDM. You'll notice that these columns are a bit different, right? I have columns all the way across the screen which are different, quite a bit so than what you would see in Windows Explorer. Plus, I also have these tabs down here that you would typically not see in your Windows Explorer environment. And as I go into my folders, I can select a folder, and I have a data card, right? This is something that you would typically not have in a normal Windows Explorer environment. You might be overly lengthy in the name of this folder because you need to be able to look at it and understand what it is. Now, I can have simple things like a name of a project or a project number. And then down below, I can have my data card, which is fully customizable, and I can have whatever bits of data in there that I feel necessary to be able to search and find for things later. Plus, I can also have any bits of those data points shown in these columns. So I have all these different projects. I can see their names. If I were to click on a column header, again, let's not forget it's Windows Explorer, I can sort ascending or descending by that over here as well. So again, just being able to find and browse through documents by clicking through them, you can see very, very easily that I have, again, here a couple of SOLIDWORKS files. I have a PDF as well. And if I click on them, I can see data about them. Each file type itself has the ability to have a unique data card, where you can have data that is pushed into the card from the file, or we can read to and from the file so data can easily translate back and forth. Same as before, if I click on the column headers, I can sort ascending or descending by any of these factors, something that normally you could not do now. I've seen companies where they will name a file, let's say part 1 underscore, and then they'll put widget or something at the end, trying to denote what the number is and then also what it's called, its description. But when you have that, you can't sort by anything other than the first character or two in that description, in that number. The description is just there for you to see. So if you need to sort by what it's called and not its number because that's the part you know, that numbering system would not work very well for you. So here we can have everything nice and split out. Plus we have a full preview functionality with having e-drawings built directly into the tool, giving you the ability for rotations, markups, measurements, explode views, and the like. So on top of the measuring, we can do many other things as well, right? When it comes to SOLIDWORKS files, we can have extensive looks at the bill of material, also the where used, right? Something that's highly underlooked when using PDM, right? You have files out there, I want to make a change to a part, let's say, or a subassembly. Understanding everywhere it's used in a moment's notice, right? A one little click and we can actually see that, right? So here's a quick look at the bill of material. Here I can see multiple different ways the bill of material is displayed, giving me the ability also down to parse through the subassemblies as needed. Plus with a single click, I can export this bill of material right out into Microsoft Excel. Giving me full abilities to do all kinds of different things within Excel that a lot of people like to do when they're using bill of materials. What's the main thing a lot of people like to do when they're looking through bills of material? They like to go back and see the history of these files, right? What did it look like at revision A? What did it look like, let's say, at revision dash? In my company, dash would be the first release. A would be the first revision, B the second, and so on. The numbering schema is irrelevant. You could have it be literally anything you'd like it to be. So I'm going to start off with revision B. I can also go over here and utilizing the compare functionality, compare what B looked like, let's say, to A. And all I need to do is scroll down the list a little bit, and it will highlight the cells as to what has been changed, what has been added, and what has been removed. So very easily you can see all the differences between the bill of material that's current and the most recent one, A in this case. One of my more favorite things about this is it will tell you what the value currently is, plus what the value used to be. Not just letting you know that something's different and you need to go discover it. Here, you can see what that value actually was. So there's a quick little look into what the interface looks like, right? It's meant to be easy. You can kick off very quickly. Not a lot of training when it comes to the interface. Browsing folders, double-clicking, opening documents, renaming. These things are all things your onboarding employees should already know if they're familiar with Windows Explorer. So your team can hit the ground running. So again, I received this information about the Homultro. I need to extend the jaws by 2 inches. Very simple request, very easy to do, but I need to have somewhere to store this new data. So I get a project request, and what I need to do is create a folder structure, put files in there, give myself an ability to keep this data somewhere and somewhere intelligently. So let's take a quick look at that. We use a functionality in PDM called templates, and it allows you to take a procedure and give the ability for a user to invoke this procedure when they need to, right? So if I were to right-click in normal Windows Explorer and come down and say New, I would be used to seeing something up here at the top that would have said Folder. But Dave, an engineer, cannot create folders, nor do we want engineers to create folders. We've had many bad examples of users creating folders based on the day of the week or whatever preference they happen to have, and then multiply that by the number of users, and you can start to see where you'd have folders, let's say for storing SOLIDWORKS files, one day called 3D, the next day called CAD, the day after that called models. And that inconsistency makes browsing significantly more difficult, i.e. adding to that 20%. So again, even something simple as creating a tool that will create folders based on a prescribed formula in a prescribed location will give you the ability to have consistency when browsing. Again, just every little bit we can do to chisel away at that 20%. So here I'm going to say, let's do a standard project. We can also have the tool query the user for statistics about said project, right? So in my example, I have all these different things that I might do. A filling machine, which has these particular sub options. I might also have in here, let's say the rescue tool, and I'm going to make a 4000 series rescue tool for Acme, and it's going to be, let's say, in the state of Virginia for the sake of argument, right? We say okay, and it is creating the structure in the background. But what you'll notice is where I was clicked, the structure isn't there because we wanted the structure to be in a specific location. So we told the tool to place it in said location. So the location is going to be the root of my design folder. And here's my new project, project 10, 4000 series. You can see on the data card where it actually displays all that information there, including the state of Virginia, Acme, rescue tool, and so on. But what it also did is it created some particular buckets for me to store my data in. We came up with the naming design data. No different than, let's say, model or 2D or 3D or something like that, but it gives the ability for people who's creating data of some kind in a design fashion to put it, right? You don't have to worry about uniqueness when coming with folder names. Documentation, specifications. We also created a checklist. So my company deemed every time we create a new project, we are going to create a structure with those folders and a checklist. And one of the great advantages of computers these days is the lack of dual entry, right? We have the ability to remove typing things in multiple times. That's been promised to us since the beginning of computers. Now, well, we can start actually using some of that functionality. So just by creating a folder structure and answering a few questions, I've now created data in my data card that can flow downwards into things that happen to be in those folders, such as this Word document. And all I did was tell Word to display things from its own internal custom properties that we write into to have it there, so I don't have to, again, repeat. So here I have my Word doc, right? And let's not forget, this is Windows Explorer. So I can save, I can close, I can double-click to reopen. This might have been a day or a week later. Again, when I'm ready to put the document in the system, I can do a check-in. Again, it's your options as to when you would do that. I'm going to go through now and check this box, which is a very simple Microsoft Word functionality. This has nothing to do with PDM. I'm simply saying check the box. I can hit save, and right inside of Word, I can come through here and simply say check in. So we have quite a few different options as far as tools that we plug into, so you can check the files in while you're working with them, right? So I'm going to say check the box, and I'm also going to say keep checked out. So what that's going to do is it's going to file away a version in the vault and then give me ownership to it again so I can make more changes. Perhaps I did that because maybe it's the end of the day and I don't want somebody picking it up tomorrow and working on it. Or I want to share my progress with somebody to this point. I can then simply do that, check it in, and now they have access to it. I'm going to do this one more time. Check another box, hit save, and check it in. So why am I going through this exercise, right? Checked another box, let's say. This time I'm not going to say keep checked out, and I'm just going to check it in. And you'll notice at the top of the screen, it now says read only. What that gives me the ability to do now is actually go back and see the file as it existed previously. So you can see those two checkboxes there. I can go in and see that I have older versions. You saw me type in these two descriptions earlier. When I go and click on checked box, it will fetch the file as it existed before in the vault. So now you can see I have things here that says yes on that one, but that second box is not checked. So the file in its entirety is preserved. We don't track the changes internal to the document. The entire document is preserved, right? Which has a great advantage if, let's say, the most latest one becomes corrupted because some sort of issue or whatnot on your network or on the server. We have all the history of those files to always revert back to at any point. So I also have, again, my design day folder and quite a few other folders as well. So with this tool, we can actually simplify the ability to create folders. By right-clicking and saying New Project and answering 3 or 4 questions that you should normally answer anyway, you can create an entire structure named properly, formatted, and filled out with metadata in a correct location, again, with just a few clicks. Wood engineer that doesn't like the path of least resistance wouldn't jump at using that, right? It makes things significantly simpler for your organization for browsability and general usability. So the design process, right? We have a request, again, from the customer to take that particular home ultro and just literally extend jaws by 2 inches. Our engineers have reviewed it. We don't need to do any other kind of structural analysis to it. We just need to update some of the geometry. Very, very simple. So I'm going to go back to my first project, which is my main base design project, and utilizing a functionality very similar to Pack and Go that you're probably already used to within SolidWorks is called copy tree. Now, copy tree behaves, in my opinion, like Pack and Go always should have, right? So I'm going to come in here and say I want to copy it to project 10. I can have it come in and grab the drawings, even grab the sim data, keep the path relative if I want to, renumber, relabel things. Windows Explorer, right? This is still Windows Explorer. How do you select everything? Well, Control A, right? So again, I don't need to reinvent the wheel or learn some new right clicks or new functionalities. I should already know how to do quite a bit of this. And again, since we're lengthening the arms, and we can see that this assembly is our top assembly and it's drawing, all we need to grab is those couple of things. And while I'm on the topic of drawings, notice this drawing here is in blue. If you recall, on the previous click, when I opened up this copy tree, I had only selected on the assembly. So why is the drawing there? Because PDM automatically does reverse lookups based on where the file is in the vault, not where we tell it to, like Pack and Go, you have to build paths. Here, it does the entire of the vault. So we don't have to worry about where the drawings are or anything of that nature. So now I'm going to come over here and dictate again, where is it going to go? And then also, what's the name of the file, right? So I have target name file here. I can switch, easily pick those items. I can sort ascending or descending, which makes it quite simple to do, right? So even in these other forms, we can do sorting and searching. So if I wanted to, I can come in here and just do a quick little manual typing of a name. I could utilize functions to add prefix and suffix, like you probably are used to with Pack and Go. So we can also use renaming with serial numbers. PDM has a multitude of serial numbers that can be assigned by file extension during the process of this copy operation, where we could simply click this button, tell it which ones to use by file extension, it'll run through the entire list. I want to use in this particular example the replace, because our base model of 4240, I want to now make ones that are 4244, let's say. I'm going to grab all the specific examples of that and hit OK. And it went down the list and grabbed, again, there's only 2 in this list, but you can see where it would have done that very quickly. And again, why did I only pick those 3 items? Why not pick everything? Well, because I don't want to make a lot of duplicates. If you remember from very initial parts of the presentation where I was talking about people using zip files to create copies, I've seen where people will have 20, 30, 80,000 documents all stored throughout their network, in and without zip files, right? They'll have usually 60 to 80% of those documents be duplicate in some way, because what they would have done before PDM is taken a folder like this. Let's say it had 100 items in it, and they needed to change 3. They would copy the entirety of the folder and just change those 3 things, which yields them 97 duplicates. Imagine that across 5 engineers, 1 project per engineer, let's say per month across 5 years. How many duplicates, that's where that 80%, where when I said it 2 minutes ago, you're probably like, that's probably not right. Now that I start to lay that out, I bet it sounds a lot more plausible. I see these things day in and day out, and most people are just floored by how much excess data they have in their systems by doing something that seems, well, quite innocent, right? So I'm going to make a quick copy, and what it's going to do is it's going to take those 3 documents, rename them, place them in the appropriate directories, and then also check them in. So now that that process is complete, let's go ahead and go to my new project and take a quick look. So I have my new spreader, I have my new long arm. Again, the geometry hasn't been changed, and it wouldn't take me just a minute to open SOLIDWORKS and change it, but we can just assume for the sake of argument that I went in and made those changes, right? So we can also come in and look at the bill of materials. So we can see that that spreader mechanism has the same exact bill of material as before. Some items, as we can see here in the Contains tab. So the Contains tab actually will tell you where the documents are, their workflow state, all kinds of interesting things. Plus it can also have things in it that at times might not be something you would normally see in SOLIDWORKS, which I'll get to here in just a minute. So we can see that Project 10, Project 1, Library. I mean, we didn't even look at that before. I have items like Loctite and other things already built into the SOLIDWORKS assembly that were left in a library and are still unmolested by this whole copy process. If I had taken that folder structure and copied it, I'm making copies of files that I don't want to change, right? And one thing I mentioned earlier, when you're doing your searching and you look for something you can't find it, well, what would be equally as bad? finding 30 of them that have different dates and times and file sizes. Which one is the right one? Now you got to sort through 30, which none of them might be the right one, right? So it's a lot of time waste, and that 20%, again, it's not something that we made up to sell software. It is a real statistic that I have seen in place at many, many companies that I've visited over the years. So that's kind of what that project request would look like, right? So I want to go through the options of, I want to make a structure. I want to give the ability for the engineers to use simple tools to make duplicates of what they need to so that they can be modified and then not be bloating my entire installation directory and all of my network servers and things like that. And backups, how much longer would a backup take with 30-40% duplicate files, right? There's a lot of things to consider when utilizing management systems. And again, if you're creating data, you're managing it some way. You may not be doing it as well as you could. So this gives you nice, real flexible design options. So the review and approval process, right? What does that look like today at your organization? I've seen whiteboards with sketches on it like this. I've seen 30-page SOPs with how to route things around and signatures and all that. We can build either very simple or very complex electronic approval processes, workflows, if you will, to manage documents. And we can have an unlimited number of workflows with an unlimited number of states if you'd like. So we can get as complex as you'd like it to be. So let's take a quick look at what that process would look like again for this one example. So here I have my mechanism, right? And what I'm going to do is just right-click on it, select, say copy. I'm going to utilize that copy here in just a moment, but I wanted to kind of get it in the buffer, if you will, for what my next thing is going to be. So I've empowered the engineer to come in and say, let's make a new document. And in this particular case, the document they're going to make is an EC, an engineering change. Don't get hung up on the acronym. It could literally be anything. What this is taking a document, copying it, renaming it, and filing it for a particular action. It could be anything, a time-off request, a change order, a new SOP procedure. It could be literally anything you'd like it to be. So here we're going to say, let's make a new EC. Here it comes up and provides me with a form to fill out. Now this form also is naming the file, EC-170619, which today happens to be June 19th, right, 2017. So that I could actually just glance at the file and see when it was created without needing to do a lot of things. So a lot of people like these intelligent numbering systems. We can adapt and make simple ones like this all day long, followed by, in this case, a 4-digit serial number at the end. So let's come in here and say the description would be new customer request. Disposition is, well, this is a new order. Maybe it's an EC form. Requested a 2-inch extension. Simple as that. Now, the nice thing about these lists, right, is I've done exercises with companies, right, and I'll pass out a pad of paper to, let's say, 4 or 5 guys, and I'll have them write out the company name IBM. Sounds simple enough. I even spelled it for them, right, so I don't have to worry about spelling. That aside, spelling, which is bad enough as it is, when I pull the paper back from each of these, some of them put IBM all together. Some of them put I.B.M. right, with the periods. Some of them put the periods in the spaces. So if you can imagine 4 different examples of something simple like that, what happens then to my search results coming downstream? I'm instantly plagued with only ever getting, statistically, 25% of my results by looking for IBM. But if I can provide a list for commonly used things, let's say in this case like the company name of IBM, because it's my customer, if you will, I can avoid spelling mistakes and punctuation mistakes and these kind of things that would, again, add to that 20%, ultimately making me have to recreate things or not being able to find something because somebody put periods in between the letters instead of nothing like it was supposed to be. So lists are great, and these lists can actually be pulled by an SQL query from another system. So let's say the list of customers is not owned and operated and maintained by the engineers, but maybe somebody in purchasing or sales. And they're using their own database type system. We can easily draw that list directly from them every time. So when we create a new change, my company has decided that when we create the new change, it's going to go in the root of the vault, in a change order folder, and the EC number is also the name of the folder. Now, why would somebody, in this example, my company, why would we do that? Well, we find that we have a lot of documents, photographs, emails, recordings, test data, whatever it would be, that solely exist to support this document. So now I have a nice container to place this information, right? What I can also do is take those 3 documents that I copied earlier, right? You saw me in the very beginning, Windows select those 3 documents, right click and say copy. They've been sitting in the copy queue there for a little while. I'm simply going to right click on this Excel document and say paste as reference. So what this gives me the ability to do now is create a parent-child relationship between a SOLIDWORKS assembly drawing and part to a Word doc. In what normal instance within SOLIDWORKS would you be able to do that? We would not. This gives us ability to then have, let's say, a traveler, the change order, being kind of the master, and it can bring its children around, in this case, these documents, which could literally be in different folders, the ability to move all together. On a tangent note, while I have this up, this show and bill of materials, this is great, right? We can actually take PDFs and Word docs and Excel files and attach them to other documents as children and have them show up in a bill of material. For instance, let's say we downloaded a PDF specification of Loctite. We want that Loctite to be in our assembly, but we don't model Loctite, right? How would you model Loctite? You wouldn't. But what you could do is take that PDF and copy and paste it to the assembly as a child, and then say I need 3, or whatever that quantity would be. So if I were to uncheck those boxes here, again, just to kind of play that example a bit, you can see very quickly where you could take a document like a PDF of Loctite, for instance, and have it show up in the bill of materials with a specific quantity. You could also have it show up in the Contains tab as well, because it's going to have all these specific items listed where you can actually have them pass through. So the last thing I want to do is I'm going to send this document off by saying change state, and I'm going to send it off for approval. Right? This is going to send it off to my manager. In this case would be Mark, right? New order request. And you'll notice that these items that are in approved, it says files in wrong state. That's not an error, and it's really kind of a light warning, if you will, letting you know that these files are not going to be changing state, nor do we want them to. They're already approved, right? So we're preserving the integrity of these documents by not allowing them to be changed, because there's nothing different about them. We're not changing them. If I were to collapse these, only these 3 items that I attach to it are what's actually going to be changing state with no warnings. So right now they're in under editing. They're going to go on to the next state, and then lastly they'll go on to that final state. So I'll quickly just say OK there. And now this part of it's done, right? So I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint. So again, review and approval process can be made as simple as you'd like to, right? We can eliminate manual steps, printing of paper, ink to pen, paper, that sort of thing, by having a workflow that could be simple, like vaulted, right? That Loctite example, that PDF, we don't own it, we don't maintain it, we just use it. We drop the PDF in the vault, and we check it in, and it's just set to vaulted. It has no process flow because it doesn't need one. Or perhaps, in that same example, it does, right? We need a second set of eyes to make sure that we've downloaded the right one with the right part number, so on and so forth, so that it's registered in our system correctly. Or, depending on the type of file and what you're doing, you could go hog wild and actually create a very complex workflow. And this could be for one document type in one project. It doesn't have to be for everything within the vault, right? We can really get very granular with the type of data and how we're managing it inside of PDM. So let's move on to the last bit here, right? Searching. How do we search, right? You've seen me do things to optimize browsing, which, let's face it, 9 times out of 10 when people are looking inside of PDM or even Windows Explorer, they're browsing. They don't immediately go on to the search, they start off with browsing. So you saw me enter in some information about the folder, right? It's a 4000 series spreader. When I typed in and did my checklist, and information propagated to there, all of the different metadata bits that were on a couple of SOLIDWORKS files that I selected. Imagine the 30, 40, 80,000 documents you have, and they've all got 30, 40 pieces of data to them, and on top of the folders having that much data as well. This little image I have on here of the Library of Congress kind of seems silly when you think about it, but if you start thinking about the amount of data you have and creating the relationships, especially with SOLIDWORKS type files, where they blend together and create this really complex spiderweb type relationship between different files, it's really not that hard to imagine how much data you could actually amass in just metadata to help identify these files, making finding things a lot simpler downstream. So let's take a quick look at the searching while we wrap up that approval cycle. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and log off as Dave. so that I can go back to my C drive, and now I can log in as the manager. My manager's name is Mark. So now I've logged in as Mark. He's got the same kind of interface, so when I go into the vault here, you can see different things, right? New, he can make folders, but he doesn't have the project function. He doesn't make projects. He can make a folder here and there randomly if he needs to, maybe by a request from an engineer because he needs something unique that doesn't quite fit within the template, or he makes folders for whatever he does. But he doesn't kick off projects because he does the approvals, not the generation, so we didn't give him the function, right? You can really have a lot of different interesting interactions when it comes to these kind of things. So Mark knows that when he is accessing the vault, he's got things to approve, right? That's kind of his thing. Now, he could spend the time digging through his emails because he might have got 10, 20, 30 notifications, or he can do a quick search based on where it is in the workflow, right? How would one do that in any way without having PDM? The one example I've seen is people will take and copy files from folder A to folder B and the pending folder. Well, by moving those documents, especially SOLIDWORKS documents that are very fragile as far as the relationships go, you're breaking the relationship. So next time you open up an assembly, you've got to tell it where these files are. And that's just monotony at its core. So what we can do now is we can simply come up here and do a quick search. And I'm going to search for things in the workflow state of review. Now, there are about 10,000 different things that you can do in this searching mechanism, including building and or statements based on variables, looking for things on data cards, typing in just bits of data without using wildcards again to find all kinds of things. So what Mark's going to do here is he's going to quickly run this search based on anything that's in the review cycle. And again, he found that one document very, very quickly. If I had even just done that using the standard Windows search, that would have probably taken 5-10 seconds. Not a long amount of time, but this took less than a millisecond, right? So when you start comparing the two, you've seen people use this Windows search, and the more folders you have, these things can take minutes, sometimes many dozens of minutes to find things, and it is extremely difficult to utilize. So here I can actually find things, and what I'm actually looking at here is not the file, it is the database, which is why it's so fast to find. It's not until I hit preview or open it does it even cache the file locally for me to use. So I can see I've got these documents here. I can look at its contains to see the different documents, right? I could right click on any of these and open them up or browse to them, look at their properties, do all kinds of different things to kind of get an understanding of what's happening with these items. This kind of search that I do, I can actually run this search repeatedly by saving it as a favorite, right? So Mark the manager every day, let's say 10 at 2, he comes in, opens PDM, opens up that favorite, and approves a couple of things he's got to work on. So simply enough, we can hit this little star here and say we can save it as a review or add it to a new favorite, right? So he's already got the one here, but how did he make that? He just simply said add favorites, new to review, let's say, and he could also save it with his manager buddies. So let's just close up the search here. All I have to do now is basically say new to review, right? Goes right back to the same search, right? So I can clear it, refresh it, go back to it, save it as a favorite. And now what Mark's going to do is he's simply going to right click, say change state, and say past approval. So again, you can see those things in the wrong state. You can even hover on these things for a moment and get previews, all kinds of different things. But those files, those 3 files here, were in under editing, right? Now they're in waiting for approval. So I can come in here and say approved. I can even go through the process of naming, sending emails. Maybe I type in the first part of somebody's name to sort it out, because sometimes these lists can get a bit lengthy depending on how many people you have. Now these files are actually moving in that workflow state from where they were before. Now you can see that this new file here is approved. So if we were to take a quick look at it, just say browse to it, you can see these files now actually have a revision. There's my revision of dash. That revision did not exist until I went through the entirety of the workflow cycle, because that's how we set up my company. If I look at the history of this file, I can see when it was created, who it was created by, who was approved by, when they approved it, and any notes they might have added when they did so, right? So we've got a very deep history of these documents and how they're created, and we can actually go back and use this as like a design history file if we want to. Other functions within the searching is, again, very simple stuff where we can come in here and depending on the folder, maybe I look in the entire root of the vault. And I might look for something that starts with MIT, right? I think I have some stuff in here that's MITRE, this or that. Again, a quick little click, and I've got my data very, very quickly, where I can see my quick results, sort by those. Again, it found those extremely fast. Again, it wasn't many, but I didn't add a wildcard. There's no asterisk or underscore or anything like that to help denote how to find things. Again, we can look from details. We can look on different data cards of items that we might have had. Variables, we can do ands and ors based on all the different characteristics of data we chose to store within the vault. Is it checked in or not? Workflow, content. I mean, we can really get very deep in how we're searching for files. So searching was extremely quick, very easy. We can save favorites. We can go through all kinds of different iterations to build granular searches, right? And again, hopefully some of the things you saw in the first 4 examples, exploring, project, design, and review, where we could do anything at all, even a little bit to chisel away at that 20%, right? I think that the searching mechanism functionality and being able to control how the interface looks and works for browsability, which is typically people's first go at finding things, if we can optimize that, that's going to be huge, right? Not to mention being able to create very quick and easy copies of things and setting up structures that don't have a lot of personality built into them, which, let's face it, personality is great when you guys are ribbing each other, but at a company trying to store data, it's not a great thing. It's just not. So hopefully that was a nice, quick journey down a path that made a lot of sense and probably even relates to quite a few different people, or maybe somebody that you know. We could spend all day here going through all the different picks and clicks with the software. But again, this one quick journey hopefully will kind of paint the picture. Any questions, by all means, reach out to us and we're happy to go through any of that stuff. So with exploring, Windows Explorer, right? It's going to be quick and easy to ramp up. We can specialize requests very easy for folders or files or all kinds of different things. Having flexible design options is going to make things significantly simpler for not making a lot of duplicates, creating good, organized, usable data. Being able to review and approve, right-click, send to approval, right-click, create EC, right-click, copy and paste as reference. We can do all kinds of different things that will streamline that data, making things, again, very, very easy to find and very easy to manage. Plus, when you can't find or manage it because you didn't right-click or do this or that, you've got all kinds of other options for searching based on all of that metadata. So again, we took that napkin sketch, we took it into something that we can actually utilize, and hopefully we can take that 20-week example we talked about, which is now 8, and get things done a whole lot faster. One of the last couple things I wanted to do here as we wrap up is kind of talk about, circling back to why PDM is going to be useful, right? So there's a very short productivity curve for learning it, right? It's already Windows Explorer. You should know a lot about that. Granularity in such a way that we can plug into Active Directory. So if you use Active Directory, which 90% of these companies these days do, when you log into the Vault, it's already logging you in based on whatever Windows credentials you have, right? So you have a higher level of security based on, I had to get into the building, I have to have this cryptic password that changes every 72 or 90 days or whatever that interval is, and we can utilize that functionality and grow with that, right? The SQL database, different server applications, we even have web applications. So if you have tablets and phones and people using Macs or whatever the case might be, vendors out in the world that need to have access to your data for browsing, downloading, approving, or just general looking around, right? So the 2 products that we typically talk about, right, are SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional and then SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard. Professional has a great number of functionalities for the more enterprise level companies. If you have a fair amount of employees, let's say more than 10, or you want to have multiple processes, some automation, more than just basic file control. Maybe you have some different plants separated by geography where you want to have the same vault everywhere and quick access to that data. Having managed distributed design teams is huge these days, right? A lot of companies have engineers at multiple facilities, and where one facility might be low on work and other one's just swamped and they need some additional resources. This helps with that process quite a bit. PDM Standard comes with SOLIDWORKS Professional and SOLIDWORKS Premium. It is the replacement for SOLIDWORKS Workgroup PDM. So it has many of the same functions. In fact, it's the same software with particular bells and whistles that are disabled. It has limited functionality when it comes to high number of users because it uses SQL Express over full standard SQL. So these limitations are all over the SOLIDWORKS website. By all means, reach out to us. We can go through and talk about them in any detail you need to so that you have an understanding of which. We can also, with the professional product, manage multiple different CAD systems. So PDM is not just for SOLIDWORKS, right? It's for all the files that can live in the operating system. So if it can be saved on a computer, irrelevant of its file extension, we can manage it in PDM. We can also manage the high complexity of your 3D modeling for other competitive products such as Inventor, PTC, Creo, even old Wildfire items, Solid Edge. Again, we have a lot of compatibility with those other 3D CAD packages. So the single view of truth would be something where, again, if you have a facility that's just down the block or across the country or in China, and you want to stop from FTPing the data back and forth or attaching things to emails and sending them along, but you want to have the same vault no matter where you happen to be, so you're looking, right? When you go to log into the vault, whether you're in China or in Tennessee or in Florida, wherever you happen to be, you all see the same exact stuff. And if somebody in Tennessee is working on it, the individual in Florida and China that may want to do something with it, they can see. And they can see that somebody's already working on it and see what they're doing. And honestly, give them a call and talk to them and say, I need this file, what's going on? But otherwise, you've got 3 people editing the same file, and then later downstream, you can't merge them, right? What do you do with that lack of continuity? So it's huge, right? So a lot of companies have the ability with the PDM Professional to have one single vault. Single view of the truth is one of my more favorite slogans that I've heard with PDM because it does allow you to see the same data across multiple geographically separated facilities. Gives you the right data to the right person at the right time, right? So only one person can have ownership and be working on a document at any one time. Something else that's asked of me frequently, and I thought it was worthwhile to bring it up here as we wrap up, is connectivity, right? How do I make PDM talk to something else, right? And I get so many different names of systems, right? Omnify, Arena, Agile, Windchill. I mean, literally there's hundreds of them out there. All of those systems that I've ever dealt with or talked to have the ability to draw in neutral documents like an XML or a CSV or tab delimited text document, right? So they ask, how do we connect and how do I send my bill of material or the metadata from my file card? How do I send that onto that other system so they can do their things, right? They always want to connect. Can you connect to X? Can you connect to Y? Well, sure, we could write something to do that, but what we have taken on as far as our philosophy is we have what's called a bit of middleware. We call it the Trimec EMU. And what it does is it creates those neutral documents based on a trigger, right? Something that might fire off at the end of a workflow without anybody needing to remember when to click. Just by approving something, it can generate PDFs and bill of material information and all kinds of stuff and generate it and place it into, let's say, a neutral folder location. It's then flavored to such a manner that the receiving system can process it and do its own thing. Therefore, we're not tying ourselves to one system or another, locking service packs and versions and those kind of things together, which can literally be a nightmare. So the question always comes up about PLM versus PDM, right? PLM, there are a few softwares out there that can do everything, and even fewer that can manage SOLIDWORKS files like we do. PDM is just a small fragment of what would be a PLM. What seems like one system to some people is literally 3 or 4 systems that use a tool like the EMU to connect and create some large organic mechanism that, again, to the end user seems seamless, which is the way it's supposed to be. But in reality, those things are hardly that way. So we have the tools and the connectivity to connect your PDM system to, again, name the acronym, MRP, ERP, PLM, there's a bunch of them out there. And we do so by transmitting neutral documents into a nice neutral location on the network, giving us the ability to make all these systems, again, seem seamless, work together. So the EMU tool also has a bi-directional functionality, so we can not only push data, but we can pull data. So as maybe new part numbers are generated in your PLM or ERP system, they can be dragged in and drawn into SOLIDWORKS PDM that is, to name the files or update fields. All kinds of different things that we can pull and push from systems into PDM. That's all that I have. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.